Premed Office Hours, episode 138. I am your moderator today, Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters, co-founder of Mapped, author of the Premed Playbook series, podcast host, and just all-around cool guy, I think. I am joined by two members of my amazing team, the amazing Medical School HQ advising team, Courtney Lewis, former director of admissions at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm quarantined in my room, trying not to catch the bug that's going around the house.
The bug.
But all things considered, doing very well. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you here. Answer lots of questions. You are the newest member of our advising team and also the freshest out of a director of admissions role. So
yeah,
I'm excited to have you. Yeah. Rachel Grubbs, co-founder at Mapped, MCAT test prep expert, pre-med expert for 20 or so years. How you doing today?
I'm pretty well. I'm fighting some illness, but I'm here right now. I feel good. I'm ready to do some pre-med Q&A.
Nice. All right. So we are here. If you're watching on TikTok, if you're watching on Instagram, welcome. We take our questions usually from YouTube. So if you go over to premed.tv, that's our YouTube channel, where you can ask questions and we'll answer them here. This is an hour of free pre-med advising, so don't miss that opportunity. And let's talk about MappedCon for 1 second. October 6th through 8th, 2023 in Baltimore. We are going to be live and in person with 1,000 of our friends, pre-health friends, hanging out, learning, laughing, live, laugh, love in Baltimore. That's what we're going to be doing. Rachel, what do you think about MappedCon 2023?
I'm really excited. I mean, honestly, a little nervous / anxious. We often talk to students as they're approaching like MCAT or applications that, hey, like hope and fear feel kind of similar in your body. I'm feeling that. I mean, I'm super pumped. It's going to be amazing. And we've been doing these virtual 1 days. So this shift to a 3-day live is a big change. So you guys know lots of work in the background. We're seeing registrations come in. We've got lots of great schools. We've got lots of great exhibitors. I've had people start asking me questions about dress code. I've had people start asking for specifics on workshops. Some of that detail is on the web. Some of it is still to be announced, to be posted when it's confirmed, but it's going to be good, friends. We've been working on this. We were working on MappedCon Live even further ahead than the virtual MappedCon last year. So this has been a long, slow project and process, and it's going to be great.
Yep. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD or discount code EARLYBIRD right now to save some money. So go do that. All right. We have some questions.
Yeah, I think so. We've been chatty in the chat, but somewhere in there, I think we found one.
Let's rock and roll. Jared asks, how does leveraging multiple acceptances work for a scholarship? I'm confused about how to approach this without sounding entitled, but also pushing to get some aid, as med school is money. The scholarship game is a very common game, I think more common in college admissions, medical school admissions. Courtney, you were at a private school. I'm not sure how much financial aid came into play at your formal school. Did you have students emailing saying, hey, I'd love to come to your school? You want to throw me some money under the table?
Yes, we did, but we also had a really amazing financial aid team that was really good at sharing, even if it was outside of our institution giving scholarships. There's a lot that are up for grabs if you're willing to do a little bit of work and a little bit of searching. And so they would stay on top of that and send those out. But you're right. It's not as common to get scholarships when you're doing med school. And so you need to be on the hunt, I would say, because they're a little bit fewer and far between than you would find at an undergrad.
Yeah. Rachel, I typically always come back to authenticity and being transparent and not trying to play a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times students want to play a game, and it sounds like Jared wants to play a game here of like, who's going to give me the most money? Like, come right up. I think that's different than, oh my gosh, I got into 2 amazing schools. I really want to go to one more than another. The school that I would be okay going to is offering some money. The school that I really want to go to is not offering some money. Let me ask, right? It doesn't hurt to ask of like, hey, school, I really want to come to you. Here's my love letter.
Yeah.
Short, sweet, to the point.
Right.
What can you do? Here's what the other school's offering.
Right. Yeah. And sorry, I took us out of that vertical because it just so damn clear how short I am, which I mean, we know, but you know, my torso is not as long as other people's torsos. I have long legs on a short body. Yeah, Jared. So, I mean, it does feel a little bit like game playing, and I don't think we mean that in a pejorative way because you may not realize, but it's just less acceptable, I think, in the med school community to do this. Like with colleges, and even to some respect with law schools, there is a little bit of like trying to get that very specific candidate, and I'm going to throw money at them to get them. But frankly, med schools don't have to do that, right? I mean, they are definitely working hard to fill a cohort. And Courtney, I know you've spoken before. It's not just about, of course, trying to create future physicians, but you have an obligation to your governance and your stakeholders to bring in a great class of people who are going to be successful, who are going to survive med school and thrive. But also something like, I think you've said 6,000 applicants, 400 interview seats, 200 spots. Like, so there is help, but that kind of comparison, I think, is just less common. And I like what Ryan said, right? If you're down to just 1 or 2 and you've gotten more money from your second choice, I don't think it hurts to politely ask. But I would be very careful about kind of doing the like, what are you going to do to convince me to go here? Because the answer might be, if you need convincing, nothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I like, there's a saying that someone says that I really like is you can't sell the unsellable, right? Yeah. So if a student is just trying to play a game to try to get more money from another school, like I'm not going to convince you to do anything. And I don't want to play that game. So that's the answer, Jared.
Hope
congratulations on multiple acceptances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is super expensive. Like none of this conversation is us defending the amount of crazy debt you're expected to take on. I'm just telling you the way it works. You're the buyer and it's a seller's market.
Unfortunately, for now.
Yeah, for now.
Steph asks, how do I appropriately contact a doctor to request shadowing? We get this question all the time. And the answer is any way you can, right? Email, phone call, potentially in person if you already work next to that person. Courtney, have you seen any creative ways that students have requested shadowing? I know you used to be involved with a scribe company back in the day. What sort of creativity can happen here without being too overbearing?
Yeah, well, it's about networking and hustling, like you were saying, pretty much anyway. So, if you know one doctor, ask them if they have friends that would be willing to let you shadow as well. Some of the more creative things that I've seen when people were really trying to broaden their network was looking up the state licensing for physicians and then or organizations that physicians are part of in the state and seeing if there's any that are in the community that they could reach out to. So there's things like that you can do if you just don't know anyone. There are listservs, catalogs, organizations, and you can find that information to kind of go off of to say, hey, I found you on this, maybe it's in a specialty that you're interested in or something like that to kind of give you a segue into the request or give you something relevant to put in it. But
yeah,
those are two ways.
I think the biggest mistake that sometimes I see students make is it's just super cookie cutter. Like, hello, doctor. I am looking for someone to shadow. I am a pre-med student. Will you let me shadow you? Right? Versus, hey, Dr. Smith, I saw that you're in my area and you do this specialty, which I'm interested in, because like making it super, super specific and personal, I think it always wins.
Yeah, well, and I mean, if you're in places like San Diego, I mean, when I would open up a scribe job, I'd get 600 applicants immediately because there's a lot of pre-meds down there. So if your market is kind of flooded, probably just a cold email is not going to be enough. Make sure you have an updated resume in case they need that, or some information to go off of. Show up dressed professionally if you can in person. Maybe talk to an office manager to see if they could run it by or give it to the physician. But a lot of the times, just a cold email, it won't be enough unless you're in a very small market.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly shout out our friend Savannah from the PA platform. We've worked with her before. We're going to keep working with her in the future. And she did it just in December. I remembered it. So I just posted a link to the Instagram post. She actually did a reel on how to ask and modeled some sentences. And the reason I'm sharing that, even though it's hers is specific to PA hours, not med, is I understand when we're saying network and hustle, some of you might be like, I don't even know what that means. I'm looking for 4 sentences to mimic. And if that's your level, if you're going, I don't even really know, like, I never use the phone. I always just text or email. I don't even really know how to do a professional phone call. She's got a post that gives you some examples of like, call and introduce yourself. Ask for the office manager. Leave the office manager a voicemail. Here's what you say in the voicemail.
I thought voicemails are where you hang up. Like,
yeah, and because the truth is you probably are going to get the office manager's voicemail, right? Yeah. And I agree with everything Ryan and Courtney are saying. But yeah, if you're looking for a little bit deeper dive, that reel she did a few months ago, if you're watching, I posted it in the chat, so it's like there in the comments where other people ask questions. You can go to her Insta page and watch that, and it's a great 2-minute teaching experience.
I was listening to a podcast recently. They were talking about how their kids don't know how to answer the phone, and so one of them is trying to teach his kid how to answer the phone, and he's like, here's the rule: if you call me and you don't say hello, here's who this is, like if it's not like a very professional-ish, like normal thing, typical what I'm expecting from you, or if I call you and you're not answering the phone appropriately, I'm gonna hang up and we'll try again. And he's like, my son would call and he'd go, hey, and I'd hang up. He goes, hey, Dad, it's me. like, oh, it's amazing. These skills we don't have anymore because we don't need to have them until we do.
Yeah, I mean, I got that stuff drilled into me in elementary school because if I wanted to have a play date with my friends, I was calling and being like, this is Rachel. May I please speak to Stephanie? You know,
while you're twirling the phone cord.
For sure. And also my hair because, stimming.
Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, I get it that not everyone has those skills, but it's time to learn them.
Yep.
Yeah, you're going to need them when you're looking for audition rotations and things like that. When you're, going into that 4th year and wanting to match, you're going to need letters of recommendation again. You're going to need audition rotations, which are month-long rotations where they get to kind of try you out and you get to try that program out. You have to get invited and get a position there to do it. So that's going to be on you to connect with people all across the nation, most likely. And so this will be a very useful skill going forward, and you won't be able to have your parents do it. So please start doing it now.
Yep.
And if you guys need extra coaching and things like that, you should just tell us and we could do a workshop.
Yeah, good point. All right, Steph says thank you. I think we really got her what she needed there. Let's move on to the next one.
Anna Katharina, is virtual physician shadowing still relevant? I live in Canada, originally from Michigan, so finding shadowing is very tricky, but I'm working on it with some contacts. Is virtual okay in the meantime? Rachel, virtual shadowing was basically non-existent until this little thing called COVID started. Right. E-shadowing was one of the first few virtual shadowing opportunities to pop up. We still do it to this day. I had an amazing conversation with a pathologist yesterday. Is it still relevant?
I absolutely think it's still relevant. It's a great, efficient way to get exposure to lots of specialties. The thing is that even though we call it e-shadowing, it's not completely shadowing. Sometimes it's more just like case studies and interviews. So yes, for its efficiency, its freeness. And right, by the way, people that are charging you to shadow, like, why? I mean, it's your money, but come on, this should be free. I don't understand paying for virtual shadowing. That makes no sense to me. E-shadowing is free, for the record. But what it's not going to give you is that full day in the life where you're watching them on the phone, arguing with insurance, where they're having to do their own charting if the scribe is out that day or they don't have a scribe. You're not getting to actually go into patient rooms with them, assuming the patient's consent. And, you know, Courtney, you're here, so please do chime in too. But the vibe I've been getting, the sense I've been getting as we continue to talk to deans and directors of admissions at med schools is virtual is okay as a supplement, but we're back to expecting at least some, if not majority, in person. I mean, you want to do 300 hours of e-shadowing, go for it. I don't think that means you have to get 500 hours of in-person, but you need to have a healthy amount of in-person shadowing again, because the pandemic, while it's not really over, like we're just going to live in this weird post-pandemic life for, you know, the indefinite future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. It's still relevant, yes, but it shouldn't be the only clinical direct, or I guess this isn't even really direct patient care. So it shouldn't be the only med experience that you have, but as kind of supplementary, sure. But yeah, they're going to want to see in person again. It was, you know, it was tough to even get faculty open to the idea of not having it for a couple of cycles. And so as soon as they can get back to the in-person and start having physicians have you there, seeing your mannerisms, being able to talk to you in person, have you with them, and being able to get a letter of recommendation from that experience, it's just going to be a lot more valuable. And that's what they want to see.
Yeah. A couple things. We've had back-to-back shadowing questions here. Something I wanted to mention with the previous one as well. HIPAA training. HIPAA is one of the biggest excuses as to why a doctor's office won't let you shadow. There are HIPAA certification websites out there that for $15, $20, you can get a HIPAA certification. The HIPAAtraining.com is the big one that comes to mind. They do the HIPAA training for medical schools, some medical schools out there. So you can go get your own certification and remove that barrier, right? To say, hey, I'm already HIPAA certified. So potentially do that. And then a question that we've been getting less often these days, but early in 2021 was, hey, am I going to need my COVID vaccine to shadow? And the answer is probably yes. Healthcare professionals, it cracked me up when everyone was outraged of mandatory vaccines. I'm like, healthcare professionals have had mandatory vaccines forever. And so COVID is just on that list as another mandatory vaccine.
Absolutely.
It's going to depend as a volunteer, as a shadower. You may not have to meet those requirements, but you may. So be prepared.
And you almost certainly will when you go to med school.
Yep.
I've had a few people say, well, I'm doing virtual shadowing because someone in my family is high risk and I can't work in hospitals or clinics. And I respect that. I'm also a high risk person. But then what do you think is going to happen in Med 3? Right? Like you're just punting the problem a couple years down the road. And also most med schools aren't going to be excited about a candidate who has no recent healthcare experience. So I do respect that issue, but you got to figure it out. And I know, Anna, now that's not what you asked. It's going deeper, but yeah, virtual is problematic in a couple ways.
Yep. Nazarowit. I'm worried about my immigration status for the cycle. My status right now is approved asylee refugee, but my permanent residency application is still processing. How do I go about it for AMCAS? I don't know. Courtney, do you have any thoughts here?
Well, you can send the schools kind of your progress reports in your application for your residency. I mean, technically, I'm not sure what level of documentation they can actually require you to submit. But it's helpful to kind of know where you're at. A lot of the times the hesitancy is either if it's a private school for tax purposes, something called a CVIS, or if it's any rules for rotations or residency placement and things that may be a bit more problematic in a certain area. And so being able to kind of update them with the status might be helpful. And then looking for schools where maybe it's not a requirement to be a US resident could also open up some schools, but you may just need to reach out to the actual individual admissions offices and kind of ask them about what level of paperwork they would like for you to submit along with your application.
I've talked to a lot of undocumented students, international students pending their permanent residency, their green card. A lot of times the answer is just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait until you actually officially have your residency status, because it's an expensive process to go through this. What's the rush? So that potentially may be the answer too, is you just wait until you officially have all the documents in hand.
Yeah, it's going to be so much easier because if you got the residency, then you can apply anywhere. But while it's pending, you're probably still looking at international only. I mean, I know it's hard to wait a year, but might just make your life simpler if you let this one piece of limbo shake out.
Yeah. I don't want to, I guess, convolute it. There's a small bit of gray area there when you get into the legality of things. But a good rule of thumb, if you don't want to fight the schools, yes, would be to wait or contact them to see if you can provide an updated information. But there's some legal stuff.
Yeah. Good luck.
Emily asks, I graduated with a 2.0 GPA 20 years ago. Hey, 20 and 20. And finished a post-bac with a 4.0 for 100 credits. Crushing it. Crushing it. 2.5. So cumulative altogether, 2.5 undergraduate GPA, 3.1 science GPA. MCAT is a 519. Woohoo! How do I select schools with such lopsided stats? Emily. First of all, you don't pick schools based on stats. Premedyears.com/437, I believe, is the episode. It's either 436 or 437. I'm pretty sure it's 437. Premedyears.com/437 is a great episode on how I recommend, as well as one of our colleagues in the space, Joanne Snap, Dr. Joanne Snap now, how she recommends picking a school list. And if you listen to that whole episode, it is not based on stats at all. Now, Courtney, I know your previous school because I sat in on a virtual session that you were giving.
Oh, yeah, when you snuck in and
when
you
I snuck
weren't
in.
under your name.
Correct. I like to sneak around sometimes. You made it very clear that trends are not looked at if you don't meet certain minimums. And so this student may fall into that trap at some schools, right?
That is true. If they have a very clear published minimum GPA requirement, then you need to meet that. It doesn't matter if you're at a 2.99, if they say must have a 3.0 cumulative, then you need to meet that minimum. Now, a lot of schools don't give you that information, which I know a lot of pre-meds find incredibly frustrating, but it's done for the purpose of situations like this, where we don't want to hold you to a GPA that's 20 years old and wasn't going to budge that much, even if you have 100 credits of a 4.0. So you may have lopsided stats, and we don't want to rule people out by putting, a 3.4 hard cutoff, because some people are in different situations and it would rule them out unfairly. And so that's why these type of stats things may be harder to find or maybe a bit vague. And why you don't have the high numbers and low numbers, you get the mean, because some people may be in situations like this where that's a great MCAT score. You've got 100 credits of 4.0. Obviously, there's a carryover between the material that you learned in your post-bac and performing well on the MCAT. And so we leave stats purposely vague so that we can look for these lopsided stats and look at the trend overall. But yes, if there is a published minimum, you do have to meet that, or else legally they can't matriculate you.
Yeah, I'm just typing in our our communication software to our dev team. I want Mapped to be able to give me, hey, what are my last 20 hours? What are my last 40 hours? What do my last 60 hours look like? Science, non-science, whatever. Because Emily, I think the big thing, and for everyone else, the big thing to remember is that schools get every single data point. I think too often we see, I have a 2.5, I have a 3.1, I have a 3.3, whatever it is. And that's the only thing that students are posting on Reddit or Student Doctor Network or Premed Hangout, wherever. And my biggest message is the next question from everyone responding to that prompt, whatever the question is, like, what are my chances typically? The next question is, what is the story behind the number? I can't give you any advice without knowing the story behind the number. And for Emily's case here, 100 credits at a 4.0 tells a very different story than 2.5 every single semester, every single year. It's a very different story. And medical schools have the ability to sort, filter, slice and dice, chop it up, whatever they want based on their individual wishes, right? Whatever they have decided as their way to look at things. The example I always give is our good friend, Dr. Layla Amiri. She's now at Vermont, but she was at University of Illinois, Chicago. I had her on the podcast, premedyears.com/388, where at her school, University of Illinois, Chicago, they had a process in their admissions committee where they could throw out a full year of your GPA. Mm-hmm. They knew life happens, right? You have a bad breakup in school, you lost your first love, you have a death in the family, whatever happens. So if you had a 3.8 freshman year, a 2.7 sophomore year, 3.6 junior year, and then a 3.8 senior year, that 2.6 or whatever it was sophomore year doesn't look very good. But University of Illinois could say, hey, something bad happened here. Let's just delete it and recalculate your GPA. So Emily, medical schools can do whatever they want with your GPA. The hard part is you just have to let the schools do their process. You have to just let it go. So my general advice for you, Emily, apply to all the schools that you want to go to, and don't worry about what their averages are, unless they have very clear, as Courtney was saying, very clear published minimums. Then they're probably, unless they like lawyers, they're probably not going to be flexible with that. But most schools don't have published minimums, thankfully.
The plural of minimum is minima, but yes, I agree with everything else you're saying.
Okay.
You correct me on my pronunciation. I can correct you on your
Minima.
misspoken word. Minima.
How many times in my life have I ever heard the word uttered? Minima. One today.
I've never heard that either.
Yeah.
Minima.
Therefore, I speak normal English. You speak educated English.
Do you say mediums or media? You don't talk about social mediums. You talk about social media.
But that's standard English that everyone uses.
So is minima.
Nobody says minima.
Okay, help me out, kids in the chat. I am not the only word nerd who knows that's the right answer. We will move on, but come on. This is a common word, right? Y'all say minima.
I've never heard it.
Nope.
There's going to be a pre-med in there who's like,
just because it's technically correct doesn't mean we use it. Right? Just like I argue all the time, it's not preventative. It's
now
preventive.
You're going to tell me it's forte, not fort.
I've heard that argument, and
Forte is an approved secondary pronunciation.
I've heard the argument, and I've seen very expert people say that the whole fort argument is not correct. So
No, it is.
I still say forte.
I usually just don't say it because it kills me to say it the second way.
Yeah, because when you say fort, everyone's like, "You mean forte?" Well, no, actually.
You don't say forte?
Technically, supposedly, fort is the right pronunciation, but I have seen linguistic experts say no, that's actually not right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Grant here's
fun.
from the
Well,
UK, but he's on my side.
I went to school in New Mexico, which doesn't rank very high in
Yeah, I think Grant actually has a pretty posh UK background, though. So
yeah.
Those British people, they can say minima in their British accent, and I would love it.
Oh, here we go. Another minima person.
Adidayo. Well, Adidayo again is British English.
Y'all understand that I learned my English half in America and half in a British school, right?
That's why.
I come by dishonest.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
That makes sense.
That's your answer. We don't speak British English here.
Yeah.
Do you say aluminium?
No.
Aluminium.
I do spell gray with an E, though.
That's wrong. All right, next question. Welcome to English with Nerds. Hello, Monica. I wanted to ask what the difference of Interfolio and my LORs. Are letters stored if I decide not to apply the cycle? And do you have to pay again next cycle? Any limit to letters sent for amount paid? Wonderful question. Rachel, Interfolio versus my LORs. Quick primer before we throw it to Rachel. My LORs is the brand new letter of recommendation service built into Mapped Pro. So you can go check it out, mylors.com, for some information.
Yeah. So this is a great question, Monica. I really appreciate it when people ask us about things we're offering. So I won't try to be the expert on it in your folio, right? I'll let you do some of that comparison shopping. But the way our My LOR service works is it's actually part of Mapped Pro. So when you buy either a monthly or an annual subscription to Mapped Pro, you automatically get My LOR. So my understanding is Interfolio is a little different. You can store anytime, but you have to pay to release. Yep. We don't charge you to release. You've got them. You can release anytime because it's just part of your subscription. The big difference is that you're not just paying for the letter of rec service. For that, it's the annual subscription is $89.99, so that works out to like $7.50 a month. So for $7.50 a month, you also get unlimited messaging with Mapped Advisors. So the kind of questions we do in pre-med office hours, we're also doing there. Now, when I say unlimited, I don't mean write me your life story and I will write back a novel. I mean, send us a question, we'll answer it. Send us another question, we'll answer it. So they do tend to sort of be short, like the pre-med office hours are, but you can do that as much as you want. And we typically reply within a business day. So we will store them indefinitely. You will have to continue to pay because it's part of your monthly or annual subscription. But the difference is for $90 a year, you're not just getting the letter storage, you're getting unlimited access to messaging. So essentially in-app inside of Mapped advising.
Yep. Yeah, it's not just letters of recommendations that you're getting. You're getting more and more to come as we continue to build.
And then you also asked any limit to letters sent. No.
Nope.
I don't know if someone tries to give us 4,000 letters, maybe we'll impose a limit. But I mean, most of you are going to be somewhere between 3 and 12. It's fine.
Yep. The big thing that we announced on Friday, we've been having conversations with the technology behind ACOMIS, which is Liaison. We've had several conversations with the AMCAS team. We've had several conversations with the TMDSAS team. And TMDSAS on Friday kind of pulled the rug on us and said, hey, we have a new law here in Texas that is not going to let us take letters of recommendations from you in any way for this coming cycle. So if you go to mylors.com right now, there's a big red banner at the top. We're working on adding it directly inside the application as well. We've already notified the people who have requested letters that if you are applying to TMDSAS, which luckily is a very small cohort of students compared to AMCAS and ACOMIS, that we will not be able to send letters to TMDSAS for this specific cycle. We're still working with them for next cycle, but that's an unfortunate development. Yeah, that's it. And I've been trying to pull up Mapped to show you all. I'm getting that same old refresh bug that our team is getting, where I can't log in. So,
oh, okay,
very interesting.
I might be able to get it. We can move on, and I'll see if I can circle back. I think we had another letter of rec question. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Malay asks, I've taken my prereqs except for biochem. My trend lines aren't consistently upward. Should I get a second degree in a science or pursue a master's? I want good, consistent trend of grades. Malay, my first question is, well, what is your GPA? Courtney, I talked to a lot of students, and they're like, I have a 3.8, but I don't have an upward trend. I'm like, I don't care about trends if you have a 3.8.
Right.
It gets kind of lost in communication. We typically leave off the upward trend, but I only really care about that if your GPA is not stellar to begin with. So what are your thoughts for Malay without really understanding where she stands right now?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you need to put yourself in the shoes of an admissions committee member, right? We are looking for evidence that would show us kind of what you look like as a student right now and what you would be coming into med school as. And so we need evidence that kind of indicates that you would excel in the curriculum. And so if we don't have that, like if your GPA or your course load or things are still in flux and inconsistent, that doesn't really give us a really strong sense of performance tied to the med school curriculum, because you're going to be in like 32, 36 hours of really high level science, plus still, participating in research, still doing volunteers, still taking care of your own spiritual, physical, mental well-being and your family and things. And so as far as doing a second degree, a master's, it's really gonna depend on the rest of your academics and kind of what you were taking. I would want to see the course load that you've been taking. If I don't have any evidence that you can take kind of core foundational science courses at a high level, at a high course load, then maybe a master's that would give me that evidence would be the most beneficial, or a certain post-bac program that would do that. If I already have that, but I just need you to have additional science coursework that could help with, potentially how you do on your MCAT and just strengthen your foundation, then I don't need a master's to do that. So it's really gonna depend on the rest of your academic profile. So put yourself in the shoes of an admissions committee member and say, what would give them the evidence that I'm a different student now than I was 3-4 years ago, and kind of go from there.
So Malay did chime in one thing, which is our science GPA is under 3.0. And again, that's CUME, so we're kind of asking about trends, which you also volunteered wasn't ideal. Malay, what I would like to suggest, and email us if you don't already have access to Mapped, email us at info at mappd.com, because what you can do is create an account here during your, we'll get you access to the pro level. You get a free trial of pro no matter what. And you can fill in all this information from all of the courses you've ever taken, and we will help you calculate your GPA, which, as you may know, is not always the same on med school applications as it is on your school transcript. So we can really look at those trends with you. And then to Courtney's point, she was kind of trying to run you through those if-thens. We'll be able to give you more detailed advice when we see what your course load is. Something Dr. Wright often says is that if you can do a post-bac, DIY, or just continued undergrad work, he sometimes considers that more valuable because those courses are more well-known. They're more well understood because master's programs vary wildly in rigor. But if you've exhausted all the upper level sciences that are at the undergraduate level, you may have to take a master's just to show more science work. So there's a lot of questions that But if you fill all this out, then you can come here to this advising section. This is included in Mapped Pro. It's also included in the trial whenever anyone creates a Mapped account. So everybody starts at the pro level, and then you drop down to the free level if you don't subscribe. But you can see here, there's sort of this chat where you can message with Courtney and me and Verinia and Ryan and Scott. And one of the most common questions we get is, hey, I entered all my courses and activities. Will you please give me some feedback? We're very happy to do that. And then while I'm doing this, I'll also go back to LORs because someone had asked about that before. So with my LORs, we kind of have this way that you can track. This example student just has one, but you can look at them by the status. You can filter them by what kind of letters you have. So if you're trying to kind of round up the counts, you know, do I have enough sciences, enough 9 sciences? Do I have a physician? And when you're requesting this letter, it's just, you know, simple boxes. I've seen really crazy in-depth things about how to use some of the other letter services. We're trying to make ours that you just get to the page and it's intuitive. It's definitely still in testing. So if you have feedback, we want it. But what we're trying to do here is not only make this really simple, even giving you some template examples for how to ask, because again, you guys have said it's hard to ask. I don't know how to ask. We also want to supply you and your letter writers with more background information that'll help the letters be stronger. So although we can't contribute to the substance of the letter, we can do things like let you offer your letter writer access to Mapped so they can see all of your background. I mean, to me, that's way better than a resume because it's everything you need in one place and it's visual. We also have some documents that you can provide and share with your letter writer. So one of the big ones is the AAMC has letter guidelines that Courtney, I know you said you feel like those guidelines also apply pretty well to ACOMAS letters. Like they're good letters for all med school applicants, regardless of application service. And your letter of rec person might be the first time they've ever written a letter. So maybe it's helpful for them to see that. So we are trying to not just provide this service, but really build this with pre-meds and pre-health students in mind and think about ways we can support you through that process.
Yep. Jessica asks, how should we list start dates for activities if we can only list one of our roles, assuming the role was only part of our time in the org? This question comes up all the time. If you are part of a pre-med club, you started as a member and then you were treasurer and then you were vice president and then you were president, or if you're in the military, it comes up all the time. I think there's a lot of fear, Courtney, of students not giving every single second of every single day of every single activity. And they're like, but how are they going to know that I did this other thing if I don't get it in there? What is the goal, the general overarching goal of this activity section?
So we just want to know what kind of hours you dedicated to it. And so if that is a larger time frame, I mean, obviously don't inflate it, but we don't have to go down all the way, to the millisecond of what you've been doing. So I know, like, I get this question when people are combining research or things like that, and they've got a couple different listings in one of their activity boxes. And so they're like, well, I did them at different time periods and things like that. It really is a bit open-ended as to how you can format that. But you guys have experience, I guess, advising on this as well. We're not going to hold tight and fast, I guess, to one deadline. We're just looking to kind of see what hours were associated with it.
Yeah, for all of you pre-meds who are applying this cycle, go read the AMCAS handbook. Right now, it's still posted for 2023 entry year, so please do keep your eyes peeled. You think usually the new one comes out in March or April, so we should have 2024 entry year soon. It is a boring read. You still need to read it once, basically cover to cover, at least skim it so you know it's there, and then bookmark it so you can Control F, because a lot of these micro questions are answered in the handbook. And Jessica, you seem to be assuming that you can only list one of your roles. That's not true. You can list multiple instances, right? So if you don't want to count summers or something, I mean, I don't think it matters, right? Just do start and end. But if you really are worried about it, for any one activity in AMCAS, you're going to be able to put, I think it's up to 4 or 5 instances. So you can do this year to this year, this month to this month. I would not do a month at a time. No one cares.
Yeah.
But just make sure, like, sometimes these questions are imposing limitations that don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, and especially if you're applying to, I said AMCAS handbook, but AMCAS, Anacomas, and Texas, you need to make friends with those websites. You need to bookmark them and control F them like crazy for the whole month of May, because you're gonna be checking a lot of those details a lot of the time, and they do change a little bit year to year. So I happen to have instances memorized, but that's based off of last year. I don't know what this year's gonna look like.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find out when you do. Ryan, you want to talk about our
one or two more? Yeah, let's talk about our workshops coming up. I have a workshop coming up. Personally, if you are applying this cycle, I have a workshop coming up on Monday and Tuesday. It'll be the same workshop both days, that you can find at premedworkshop.com. We also have an activities workshop coming up on the 2nd. Again, all of our workshops you can now find at premedworkshop.com. So that's a great place to go to see all of the amazing free stuff that we're doing outside of this amazing free thing.
Let's pick our friend Grant for our last one, because he posted earlier and I made him rewrite it.
As an American pre-med finishing a PhD in England, how would doing medical school here seem? I have a partner here, plus med school is much shorter / cheaper, but I worry about being an IMG applicant, as you should. Unfortunately, the data does not bode well for IMG applicants. IMG, for those who don't know, is International Medical Graduate. I've seen some weird stuff lately that we used to typically call IMGs FMGs, foreign medical graduates. I've seen people say, well, FMG is a non-US citizen, international medical graduate. IMG is a US citizen. I've never seen that distinction other than one person saying it. I don't know if that's whatever. IMG. IMGs have worse match rates than everyone else. So if you want to go to school in England, you can. It'll just be a harder road back. You really have to make sure that the biggest thing to make sure, there's a accreditation body called the ECFMG. I forget what it stands for, but the ECFMG is basically an accreditation body to make sure that international medical graduates coming back to the States, the school that you have gone to passes all of the criteria for rigor and everything else, preparing you for residency and for practicing here in the States. So make sure that any school that you go to is ECFMG certified, or whatever that specific language is that they use.
Yeah.
I've had physicians that, practiced overseas call me and say, is there anything I can do? Can I start even later? Can I start and just do my 3rd and 4th year again and things like that? And unfortunately, no. And so, they go out and get different jobs, right?
Yeah.
They're no longer physicians when they're in the US. And so if you plan on staying in England, shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But if you plan on returning, I've had quite a few people call me to try to figure out anything that they can do, and it just seems like they are hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and a lot of them just end up not being physicians in the US.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing, Grant, right? Because
who's clicking a pen over there?
Oh, me.
Rachel.
She's always stimming. You've got a partner there, right? So med school is shorter, cheaper, yes, but you've got a partner there. But so if you want to come back and practice here, you're kicking that problem of relocation down the road. It's still going to come up eventually. So we're not going to tell you and your partner how to lead your lives, but it sounds like you guys have some big questions to answer.
Yeah, I when I was an intern, I worked with someone. She was a 2nd year resident, maybe. she was an MDDO. I'm like, how do you be an MDDO? Like, how does that work? She was an international medical graduate. She went to medical school in Russia, I believe, was an MD, had her degree, came to the States, couldn't match, couldn't get into residency. And she was like, screw it, I'll just go back to school again. and she did. So she graduated an MD overseas, graduated with a DO here, and off to the races. So it amazes me. I think I heard something recently, and it's just so obvious, but I've never heard it said that way. Like, we have, in the last couple administrations, right? Not to get political here, but both sides of the aisle right now are super anti-immigration. I don't know why. We need more immigrants in this country, more brilliant and hardworking immigrants coming to this country.
Yes.
And we have this, I think, thing where people who are non-native English speakers, when we hear them struggling with English, we go, oh, you're dumb, right? I think that's a very common assumption. Oh, you're dumb. I'm like, they mastered their own language already. They're here trying to master another language. What do you mean they're dumb? Like, don't be stupid. Like, just take a second to go, oh, like we don't call toddlers dumb for saying the wrong words. And we know that the toddlers have a normal progression of English.
Also, have you heard some of our politicians speak in English? I mean, they're native speakers and they're not much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot. As someone who is probably fluent in Spanish, although I'm nervous about using that word because I struggle still, right? Tests have shown like that you take those quizzes, I have like a 70,000 word vocab in English and a 10,000 vocabulary in Spanish. So I don't feel fluent in Spanish. It's not enough words for me. But the truth is, most of those people, it's just the accent, the syntax, the cadence. But I have that when I talk to people from different regions of the U.S. too, right? It's a comfort with that kind of communication that most Americans are not used to dealing with.
I'll kind of get into a little bit on the law side too, just because I had these questions come up. And so as somebody who ran a program and had to talk to the legal team, we talk about you have to have a US-based or equivalent bachelor's degree, or a WES evaluation, and all of these things. And in some places, you start med school much earlier. You designate, you go on through, and so you don't have those or equivalent. No. And school is just at a different pace, so it could be much more rigorous. But we can't, if we've published that we have to have these things to be able to matriculate, and it's standardized. And format in your school, even if it was much better, and you have a lot, they're not apples to apples. And so then I can't hold everyone to the same standard legally if I accept somebody who does not fit that format. And so, it gets hard in those type of circumstances because, as directors or deans, our hands are kind of tied by these standards that have been published or set that are kind of across the board for a lot of institutions and just kind of nationally recognized. And until those get a bit broader to accommodate that, I think you're not going to see a lot of budging in changes to that being accepted.
We had a big lawsuit in Utah. University of Utah Medical School was sued based on potential discriminatory practices in their admissions. Texas right now, the whole state of Texas is being sued basically for potential discriminatory practices in their process. So we're going to find medical schools are going to be even tighter lipped and tighter to the letter with everything, which makes whatever. So anyway, we are at time, friends. Another Premed office hours in the book. Go to premedevents.com to check out all the amazing free workshops that we are doing, and go to mapped.com. Use that referral code 30 days free to get 30 days of Mapped Pro for free. Remember, Mapped is free. Calculate your GPA, track your activities, start working on your applications, track your applications, All that's free. If you want access to us through our advising chat in there, if you want access to my LORs, if you want access to Mapped email, which is coming, more to come, go use Mapped Pro for those amazing free and paid things.
Yeah. And I know we had a lot of questions. It was great to see high attendance today. Lots of questions we didn't get to. Map.com. You can message us there, and we'll be back this time next week.
True.
All right. Bye, everybody.